I recently came across some TikToks and Reddit posts showing how Apple devices have been unlocked. That got me thinking, if workers can do this, what's stopping someone from stealing my phone in a library or while I'm rock climbing and unlocking it with a simple photo? I thought, surely not, right? So I decided to dig deeper into popular facial recognition systems like Apple Face ID, Android Face Unlock, and Windows Hello to see how secure they really are. By the end of this video, we'll know if the average Joe can steal our data and to what extent these technologies actually protect us. So the first thing I tried looking into to try and hack facial recognition was printed photos. Now, printed photos are the most simple method of trying to hack facial recognition. This is by far one of the simplest techniques, and it involves trying to get a printed photo of your target and showing the camera to try and trick it into believing it's the real target. I then looked into digital photos and videos, which is of the same nature as printed photos. The idea is just to capture a photo or video on something like an iPad and present it to the camera, fooling it into thinking it's a real face. Now, the third technique I tried to look into was a 3D mask, but unfortunately I didn't have one because they're really time consuming and really expensive to make, and I wasn't prepared to spend that much money. Well, taking a scientific approach, I tested these methods on 3 systems: Apple Face ID, Android facial recognition using a Samsung Galaxy A51, and Windows Hello. I hypothesized that the simpler techniques wouldn't work on Apple ID or Windows Hello, but it might work on the Galaxy A51 due to its budget status. I aimed to average the number of successes across 10 attempts to calculate the success rate. I started with the printed photo that I printed out at Officeworks. Unfortunately, or very fortunately, the printed photo didn't work on any of the devices with a success rate of 0%. For digital photo and video, it also had a 0% success rate. However, for my Android phone, I was able to register the printed photo as an alternate face, but it was unable to unlock from the photo despite that. Now for 3D mask. I know this is very unprofessional of me, but I don't actually have any data of 3D masks because I can't make one and they're very expensive and time consuming to produce. However, I will instead refer to a Wired article on the same topic. In this article, they state that they had no luck in trying to unlock the iPhone X with a 3D mask, and we can infer that it's a 0% success rate as well for the iPhone. However, I did find a Forbes video showcasing how a 3D head was able to break through some Android phone's facial recognition system. All 3 of these primitive attacks failed because they're all equipped with at least basic protections against spoofing. Despite my best efforts to try and crack into my A51 with a printed photo and digital photo, in a desperate attempt to prove my hypothesis as correct, it withstood my attacks. To understand why, let's break down the tech behind these systems. Starting with Apple phones, which are the most secure of the 3 options, there are 3 sensors that make up the True Depth camera, which is Apple's sophisticated facial recognition system of a laser dot projector that projects a grid of small infrared dots onto a user's face, a infrared camera, and a flood illuminator. When a user sets up Face ID, the system captures a 3D facial map by using 30,000 infrared dots over the user's face and creates a mathematical mapping of the user's face stored on the secure enclave of the device. Each time the user attempts to unlock the device, the sensor will rescan and compare it to the 3D mapping. For even more security, Face ID also includes liveness detection, which only unlocks the phone if a live face is present and is looking at the phone. Next, we look at Android phones. The issue in talking about security here is that Android phones offer a varying level of security depending primarily on brand and model, as there are no standard hardware components across the Android phones. Instead, there's a biometric security standard proposed by Google. This standard tests Android phones and classes them based on performance against 3 metrics. These are the spoof acceptance rate, SAR, which defines the chance that a biometric model accepts a previously recorded known good sample. For example, a photograph of the user's face, the known good example, and the previously recorded. The imposter acceptance rate, IAR, which defines the chance that a biometric model accepts an input meant to mimic a known sample. For example, a mask of the user. And finally, the false acceptance rate, FAR, which defines how often a model mistakenly accepts a randomly chosen incorrect input. The results then lead to a classification of either Class 3, Class 2, or Class 1, where Class 3 is the most secure. The two most popular options for Android phones are Samsung and Google, both of which claim to be Class 3. Samsung especially claims that all their Galaxy phones are Class 3, including the budget phones like the Galaxy A51. Meanwhile, Google has implemented infrared sensors and depth sensing technology similar to Face ID, while Samsung makes no claim of its technology. Some more advanced Android systems also implement a time of flight sensor system to map a 3D grid of the user's face, increasing the security by detecting depth differences between the face and the background. It is pretty clear to see that Android would be the most diverse of all systems, and security would be dependent on the manufacturer. Lastly, we look at Windows devices with the Windows Hello system. Windows devices use a near-infrared imaging system to authenticate its users, similar to Apple Face ID. The use of infrared also prevents spoofing, as digital and printed photos don't display in the infrared wavelength. To summarize, Face ID stands out due to its true depth camera and its extensive use of a 3D depth mapping. Android systems are diverse, with some opting for a 3D camera, some opting for 2D, and Windows Hello has solid security with their infrared camera, similar to Face ID. The first vulnerability that is universal to all systems is that identical twins, close relatives, or extremely similar looking people would make the system less secure. Another vulnerability is if the system is trained with an alternative appearance, or if they include accessories such as glasses, sunglasses, or masks, as it could make it less secure. On the side of Android Face Unlock, some phones would be more vulnerable to attacks, possibly even more primitive attacks, depending on the manufacturer, since not all devices are built the same. While Windows Hello is generally secure, there are still vulnerabilities to some more sophisticated attacks, which we'll get into. Now moving on. We'll talk about more sophisticated attacks, but won't focus too much on them, as we just want to kind of explore average Joe primitive attacks in this video. Regardless, I'll talk about some that might pique your interest. The first sophisticated attack is an adversarial AI attack, where hackers modify images by adding pixel-level perturbations, tricking the facial recognition systems into authenticating an attacker. Another attack is face morphing attacks, where AI blends two faces together, making it hard for the systems to tell them apart. Finally, there are backdoor attacks, where an AI model could be tampered with to allow access to specific faces on command or poison training data. While fascinating, these threats are less practical due to technical limitations requiring more specialized resources and expertise to generate these attacks. The key takeaway here is that for an average user, facial recognition is pretty secure. Systems like Face ID, Windows Hello, and some Android phones use advanced tech to keep your devices safe from basic attacks. For most of us, it is reassuring to know that your phone is safe from the average Joe, but if you're really concerned about your privacy and security, it is better to focus on the secret part, which would be your pins and passwords, rather than biometrics, as those can be replicated. Thank you for tuning in. I'll probably catch you some other time. Bye for now.